One stormy night at an upscale charity gala, a quiet ex-Navy single father working as event security notices something that makes his blood run cold: a sabotaged chandelier rigging directly above the evening's keynote speaker. A brilliant tech CEO worth billions. His split-second warning, "Stay still, don't move," saves her life as 2 tons of crystalline steel crash down exactly where she stood moments before. What begins as a heroic rescue spirals into a dangerous conspiracy when she discovers he's not just another security guard, he's a tactical genius who walked away from everything, grateful and intrigued. She makes him an offer that could change his daughter's future forever, partnership in her empire. But accepting means stepping into a world of corporate warfare, hidden enemies, and a deadly secret that connects his military past to her company's future. Some rescues don't end when the danger passes sometimes. They're just the beginning of something far more dangerous and infinitely more valuable than either of them could imagine. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The autumn rain fell soft and steady over Portland, painting the streets in shimmering reflections of neon and streetlights. Inside the modest 2-bedroom apartment on Hawthorne Boulevard, Adrian Cole stood at the stove, flipping grilled cheese sandwiches with the practiced ease of someone who had learned to make every moment count. The kitchen was small but immaculate, every surface clean, every utensil in its place. Old habits from his Navy days, where order meant survival and chaos meant someone didn't come home. Now those habits meant something different: stability for his 10-year-old daughter Sophie, who sat at the worn wooden table with her nose buried in an advanced physics textbook that would challenge most college students. Adrian glanced over his shoulder, a slight smile tugging at his lips as he watched her. Sophie's dark hair fell in waves around her face, and her green eyes moved rapidly across the pages, absorbing information like a sponge. She had her mother's eyes, he thought, feeling the familiar ache that never quite went away. 3 years since the accident, and some mornings he still reached across the bed expecting to find Rachel there. The apartment told the story of their life, together, framed photos on every surface. Sophie's science fair ribbons pinned to a corkboard. A small bookshelf overflowing with textbooks and novels. The furniture was secondhand but cared for, the curtains handmade by Rachel before she passed. Everything here spoke of love maintained through loss, of a father doing his absolute best to fill the space left by an irreplaceable absence. Adrian plated the sandwiches and carried them to the table, setting one in front of Sophie. She looked up, blinking as if surfacing from deep water. "Thanks, Dad," she said, her voice bright with enthusiasm. "Did you know that if you could fold a piece of paper 42 times, it would reach the moon?" Adrian settled into his chair, his muscular frame seeming almost too large for the delicate wooden seat. At 38, he still carried himself with the bearing of a naval officer: straight spine, alert eyes, movements economical and precise. His dark hair was cut short, flecked with early gray at the temples, and his hands bore the calluses of someone who worked with them daily. "I did not know that," he replied, taking a bite of his sandwich. "But I'm guessing you're about to tell me why that's mathematically impossible in practice." Sophie grinned, launching into an explanation about exponential growth and the physical properties of paper. Adrian listened with genuine interest, even though half the terminology sailed over his head. This was their ritual, Sophie sharing her latest discovery, Adrian asking questions that encouraged her to think deeper. After her mother died, Sophie had thrown herself into learning with an intensity that sometimes worried him. But her therapist said it was healthy, a way of processing grief by seeking understanding in a world that had suddenly become unpredictable. So Adrian supported it, buying her books they couldn't quite afford, finding online courses taught by university professors, encouraging every question no matter how complex. His phone buzzed on the counter. interrupting Sophie's explanation of theoretical paper folding. Adrian retrieved it, reading the message with a slight frown. "Elite Events needs an extra security supervisor tonight," he said, already calculating logistics in his head. "Big charity gala at the Cascade Grand Hotel. Premium pay, but it means I won't be home until late." Sophie's face fell slightly, then recovered with the resilience she had learned too young. "It's okay, Dad. Mrs. Kowalski can check on me, right?" Their neighbor, a retired teacher with a soft spot for Sophie, had become their unofficial backup family. Adrian nodded, already texting her. "You sure? I know we were going to watch that documentary about black holes." "We can watch it tomorrow," Sophie said, though her disappointment was evident. "Besides, you always say we have to take opportunities when they come." Adrian crossed to her and kissed the top of her head, inhaling the strawberry scent of her shampoo. "You're too understanding for your own good, kid. When did you get so grown up?" "When I had the best teacher," she replied simply, hugging him around the waist. An hour later, Adrian stood in front of their bathroom mirror, adjusting his black suit and tie. The security company uniform was simple but professional. Dark suit, white shirt, discreet earpiece, polished shoes. He looked every inch the capable professional, which was exactly the point. Most people saw security guards as invisible, forgettable. That was fine with him. Invisible meant he could observe without being observed. A skill that had served him well in the Navy and served him even better now. His reflection showed a man who had been through fire and come out forged rather than broken. There were scars, of course, most of them hidden under his clothes. A puckered line along his left shoulder from shrapnel in the Gulf. Burns on his hands from pulling a civilian family from a burning vehicle in Afghanistan. And the deeper scars, the ones that didn't show, the nightmares that still came occasionally, the hypervigilance that never quite turned off, the weight of decisions made in split seconds that changed lives forever. But he had also learned something invaluable in those years: how to read situations, how to see the details everyone else missed, how to stay calm when everything went to chaos. Those skills paid the bills now, kept Sophie fed and housed and educated. That was enough. Before leaving, he stopped by Sophie's room. She had changed into her favorite pajamas, covered in constellations and planets, and was setting up her telescope by the window. "Cloud cover's supposed to break around 9, she said without turning around. "I'm hoping to get a good look at Jupiter's moons." Adrian leaned against the doorframe, his heart swelling with fierce pride. "Take pictures if you can. I want to see them tomorrow." "Will do." "Captain," she said, using her nickname for him, a reference to his former rank that always made him smile. "Love you." "Soph, love you too, Dad. Stay safe." The words were automatic. A ritual exchange, but they carried weight. They both knew his work could be dangerous, even if most nights involved nothing more exciting than checking credentials and walking perimeters. But sometimes, rarely, things went wrong. And when they did, Adrian's training kicked in. The years of tactical operations and crisis management rising to the surface like muscle memory. The drive to the Cascade Grand Hotel took 20 minutes through rain-slicked streets. Portland's downtown glittered around him, all modern glass and historic brick. Craft breweries next to tech startups, food trucks parked beside upscale restaurants. The city had changed so much since he was a young man shipping out for his first deployment. But it still felt like home. The Cascade Grand rose 30 stories above the waterfront, all gleaming windows and Art Deco elegance. Valets in crisp uniforms directed luxury vehicles under a covered entrance, where well-dressed guests emerged into the golden glow of the lobby. Adrian parked in the staff lot and made his way to the security office, where he checked in with the shift supervisor, a former Army Ranger named Thompson who ran a tight operation. "Good to see you." "Cole," Thompson said, handing him a radio and a detailed floor plan. "Tonight's the Millennium Foundation Gala. Tech executives, venture capitalists, a few politicians. The keynote speaker is Vivian Cross, CEO of Quantum Dynamics. You know who she is? Adrian shook his head. Tech industry news wasn't something he followed closely. Billion-dollar company, revolutionizing quantum computing and encryption, Thompson explained. She's brilliant, ambitious, and according to our briefing, potentially controversial. The foundation invited her despite some board members objecting to her aggressive business tactics. Your job is second-floor ballroom oversight. Watch the crowd. Keep an eye on the service entrances. Standard protocol. Adrian studied the floor plan, his mind automatically cataloging exits, sight lines, potential vulnerabilities. Any specific threats? Nothing concrete. But with this crowd and that much money in one room, we stay sharp. In one room, we stay sharp. The ballroom was a vision of old-world elegance, soaring ceilings, crystal chandeliers, walls paneled in rich mahogany. Round tables draped in white linen filled the space, each centerpiece an arrangement of white roses and gold accents. A string quartet played softly in one corner while servers in bow ties circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Adrian took his position near the main entrance. Hands clasped loosely in front of him, eyes moving constantly across the room. He noted the emergency exits, the location of fire extinguishers, the faces of other security personnel stationed at key points. His mind cataloged everything automatically: the waiter who seemed nervous, the guest who had already had too much to drink, the woman in the red dress who kept checking her phone with increasing agitation. And then Vivian Cross entered. And the energy in the room shifted noticeably. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Vivian Cross moved through the ballroom like someone accustomed to being the center of attention, yet somehow uncomfortable with it. She wore a midnight blue gown that caught the light with every step, elegant and understated despite clearly being worth more than Adrian made in 6 months. Her dark hair was pulled back in a sleek style that emphasized sharp cheekbones and intelligent, gray eyes that seemed to miss nothing. She was younger than Adrian expected, perhaps early 30s, and there was something in the way she carried herself that spoke of battles fought in boardrooms rather than on battlefields, but battles nonetheless. As she greeted donors and shook hands with foundation board members, Adrian noticed the slight tension in her shoulders, the way her smile never quite reached her eyes. The gala proceeded with polished efficiency. Dinner was served on fine china, speeches were made praising the foundation's work in STEM education, and donations were pledged with the casual ease of people for whom money was merely a tool. Adrian remained at his post, vigilant but unobtrusive. Just another piece of the elegant machinery that made events like this run smoothly. As dessert was being cleared and the crowd settled in for the keynote address, Adrian's attention was drawn upward by something he couldn't quite name at first. A sound perhaps, or maybe just an instinct honed by years of expecting the unexpected. The massive crystal chandelier directly above the speaker's podium seemed normal at first glance, its thousands of crystals catching and fracturing the light into rainbow patterns across the ceiling. But something was wrong. Adrian's eyes narrowed as he focused on the mounting bracket where thick steel cables secured the chandelier to the ceiling beam. One of the cables appeared to be fraying, individual strands separating under tension. No, not fraying, he realized with a cold shock of recognition. Severed. Someone had cut through most of the cable, leaving just enough intact to hold the weight. Until the right moment, his gaze swept to the other 3 cables. Normal, intact, but one was enough. With the angle of the cut and the weight distribution, that chandelier would swing as it fell, creating an unpredictable arc of 2 tons of crystal and steel. Vivian Cross was approaching the podium, her heels clicking on the polished hardwood floor. The crowd applauded politely. She smiled, adjusted the microphone, and positioned herself directly in the chandelier's shadow. Adrian didn't think. 12 years of tactical training and crisis response compressed into a single moment of absolute clarity. He was moving before his conscious mind fully processed the danger, his long strides eating up the distance between his post and the podium. Security protocols evaporated, replaced by something more fundamental, the imperative to protect life at any cost. The crowd noticed his movement, faces turning with expressions ranging from curiosity to alarm. Adrian ignored them all. His focus narrowed to a single point, the woman standing beneath thousands of pounds of imminent death. "Stay still. Don't move," he said sharply, his voice carrying the command authority that had once directed teams through combat zones. Vivian's head turned toward him, gray eyes widening in confusion and indignation. She opened her mouth to speak, probably to demand what he thought he was doing, interrupting her moment. Adrian reached her, just as the damaged cable gave way with a sharp, metallic snap that cut through the ambient noise like a gunshot. The chandelier lurched, swinging in a deadly pendulum arc. He didn't grab her or tackle her. Those actions would have moved her into the path of the falling fixture. Instead, he simply placed himself between her and the danger, one arm sweeping her backward with controlled force while his other hand braced against the podium. The world slowed to syrup-thick seconds. Adrian registered every detail with crystalline clarity, the gasp that rippled through the crowd, the screech of tearing metal as the remaining cable strained, the way light refracted through falling crystal like deadly diamonds. Vivian stumbled backward into his protective grip, the scent of her perfume, something subtle and expensive mixing incongruously with his own surge of adrenaline. The chandelier fell. 2 tons of crystal, steel, and electrical wiring crashed down exactly where Vivian had been standing seconds before. The impact was catastrophic and spectacular. The podium shattered into splinters. The hardwood floor cracked under the force. Crystals exploded outward in a lethal spray, peppering tables and walls. The sound was enormous, a thunderous collision that seemed to shake the entire ballroom. Then silence. Absolute, shocked silence. Adrian felt something warm on his cheek and realized a crystal shard had grazed him. Drawing blood. Minor, irrelevant. His eyes were already scanning for secondary threats. His body positioned to shield Vivian from any follow-up attack. His mind raced through tactical assessments. Sabotage confirmed. Assassin potentially still present. Crowd now panicked and vulnerable. Vivian stood frozen in his arms, her breath coming in short gasps. Her eyes were locked on the destruction before them, on the twisted metal and shattered crystal that occupied the exact space where she had been standing moments ago. Her face had gone pale, but her expression showed shock rather than hysteria. A clinical assessment of how close she had come to death. "That was meant for me," she said quietly, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. It wasn't a question. "Yes," Adrian confirmed, still scanning the room. The crowd was erupting now, people screaming and rushing for exits. Security personnel converged on the scene. Thompson's voice crackled urgent commands through the radio, clipped to Adrian's belt, but Adrian's attention was on something else. In the chaos, most people were fleeing. But one figure near the service entrance stood perfectly still, watching the scene with an expression Adrian recognized, disappointment at a failed operation. The man was dressed as a server, but his posture was all wrong. Weight balanced on the balls of his feet, eyes moving with tactical assessment rather than panic. Their gazes met across the chaos. For a fraction of a second, recognition flashed between them, predator acknowledging predator. Then the man turned and disappeared through the service door. "We need to move you to a secure location," Adrian said to Vivian, his tone brooking no argument. "Now." She nodded, her shock beginning to give way to sharp intelligence. "That man by the kitchen entrance. You saw him too." Adrian felt a flicker of surprise. Most civilians in crisis saw nothing beyond their own fear. Yes, which means he knows we saw him, and he'll either extract or try again. We have a narrow window. Thompson reached them, his face grim with professional fury. A security failure of this magnitude would have consequences. Cole, report. Sabotaged rigging. Deliberate cut to the support cable, timed for the keynote address, Adrian said rapidly, his training organizing the information into clear briefing format. Potential hostile, male, late 30s, 5'10". Serving staff uniform. Exited through the west service door approximately 15 seconds ago. Ms. Cross needs immediate extraction to a secure location. I recommend treating this as an active assassination attempt. Vivian's hand gripped his arm, her fingers surprisingly strong. I'm not leaving until I understand what just happened and who tried to kill me. Understanding comes second to staying alive, Adrian replied, gently but firmly guiding her toward a side exit away from the crowd. Right now, we assume everyone is a potential threat until proven otherwise. The next 30 minutes were controlled chaos. Police arrived, securing the scene and beginning witness interviews. Paramedics checked Adrian's minor cut and Vivian's potential injuries from shock. Forensic teams photographed the destroyed chandelier and took measurements of the severed cable. And through it all, Adrian stayed close to Vivian. His presence a quiet shield between her and a world that had suddenly revealed itself to be far more dangerous than a corporate CEO normally encountered. In a secure conference room away from the ballroom. Detective Sarah Park from Portland PD's Major Crimes Unit took their statements. She was sharp-eyed and thorough, her questions revealing a mind that saw connections others missed. Ms. Cross, Detective Park said, her pen poised over her notebook. Any idea who might want you dead? Business rivals? Disgruntled employees? Personal enemies? Personal enemies? Vivian's laugh was bitter. Detective, I run a company at the forefront of quantum encryption technology. We protect financial transactions worth trillions, secure military communications, and safeguard corporate secrets for half the Fortune 500. The list of people who might benefit from my death is extensive and international. That's not exactly helpful, Park replied dryly. But it's honest, Vivian said, meeting the detective's gaze. In my industry, information is power, and whoever controls the encryption controls access to information. My company has made a lot of powerful people nervous. Adrian had been standing quietly by the door, but now he spoke up. The timing suggests inside knowledge. The gala schedule wasn't public information. Someone knew exactly when you would be at that podium. Both women turned to look at him. Park's expression was assessing, recognizing someone who understood operational security. Vivian's was something else entirely, a mixture of curiosity and respect. You have tactical training, Vivian said. It wasn't a question. Military? Navy, Adrian confirmed. 12 years, mostly special operations. Now I work private security. And you just happened to look up at exactly the right moment to see a sabotaged cable in a dimly lit ballroom? Adrian met her gaze steadily. I was trained to see what others miss. It's kept me alive, and tonight it kept you alive. The clock on the conference room wall read midnight when Detective Park finally closed her notebook and stood. Her expression weary but determined. We'll have officers stationed outside your home tonight, Ms. Cross, Park said. I strongly recommend you increase your personal security until we understand the scope of this threat. Vivian nodded, though Adrian could see the tension in her jaw. She was someone used to control, to managing variables and calculating risks. Having her life depend on the competence of others clearly rankled. I have a corporate security team, Vivian said. They'll coordinate with your department. Park turned to Adrian. Mr. Cole, you'll need to come down to the station tomorrow for a formal statement. Your actions tonight saved a life. But there will be questions about security protocols and how the sabotage went undetected. Adrian understood the subtext. Someone was going to take the fall for this failure. And his position as the newest member of the security team made him vulnerable. Thompson and Elite Events would be looking for someone to blame. And the hero who broke protocol to save the target was a convenient scapegoat. "I understand," he said simply. After Park left, Vivian gathered her evening bag and stood, her movements showing the first signs of exhaustion after the adrenaline crash. Her gown was torn at the hem from when Adrian had pulled her backward, and there was a run in her stockings. She looked rumpled and human in a way that somehow made her more rather than less formidable. "Thank you," she said, looking directly at Adrian. "That seems inadequate for saving my life, but I don't know what else to say." "You don't need to say anything," Adrian replied. "I did my job." "Your job was to stand by the door and look intimidating," Vivian said with a slight smile. "What you did went considerably beyond that." Thompson appeared in the doorway, his expression grim. "Cole, we need to talk." Adrian nodded, unsurprised. "Yes, sir." "Miss Cross, your car is waiting downstairs," Thompson said, his tone considerably more deferential. "Again, our deepest apologies for the security failure." Vivian started to leave, then paused and turned back to Adrian. She reached into her bag and withdrew a business card, the kind made of actual cardstock rather than collected digitally. On it was embossed a simple logo, a stylized Q in silver, and beneath it her name and a private phone number. "Call me tomorrow," she said, pressing the card into his hand. "I'd like to speak with you about something important." Before Adrian could respond, she was gone, heels clicking down the corridor with 2 uniformed officers as escort. He looked down at the card, feeling its weight, both literal and metaphorical. Thompson's voice brought him back to the immediate present. "My office now." The conversation was exactly what Adrian expected, a mixture of gratitude for preventing a catastrophe and anger at protocol violations. He had left his assigned post, physically contacted a guest without permission, and created a scene that would require extensive damage control with the client. The fact that his actions had saved a life was relevant, but not sufficient to erase the procedural violations. "You're suspended pending investigation," Thompson said finally. "I'm sorry, Cole. You did the right thing, but I have corporate breathing down my neck and they want a complete review. Take a week. We'll figure out where we stand after the heat dies down." Adrian accepted the decision without argument. He had known the consequences when he moved, had calculated the cost, and decided it was worth paying. Sophie would understand. They had enough saved to cover a week without income, and his conscience was clear. The rain had intensified by the time he left the hotel, cold autumn water soaking through his jacket as he walked to his car. The streets were nearly empty at this hour, just the occasional taxi and the neon glow of late-night diners reflecting off wet pavement. Portland looked different at night, quieter and somehow more honest, all its rough edges visible without daylight to soften them. His phone rang as he reached his car. Sophie's number. His heart jumped, the immediate parent's fear that something was wrong. "Hey, kiddo, you should be asleep," he said, trying to keep his voice light. "I was. But then Mrs. Kowalski called and said she saw something on the news about the hotel where you were working," Sophie said, worry evident in her young voice. "Dad, they said a chandelier fell and someone almost died. Was that you? Were you there?" Adrian closed his eyes briefly. He had hoped to have this conversation in person, where he could reassure her with his presence as much as his words. "I was there, Soph. Everyone's okay. I'll tell you all about it when I get home." "The news said a security guard saved someone," Sophie continued, and Adrian could hear the pride beneath the worry. "That was you, wasn't it?" "It was. Now seriously, back to bed. School tomorrow." "Dad, I'm too wired to sleep. Can we watch the Black Hole documentary when you get home?" "I don't care if it's late." Adrian smiled despite his exhaustion. Deal. Give me 20 minutes. The apartment was warm when he let himself in. Lights still on in the living room, where Sophie had clearly been waiting, despite her promise to go back to bed. She launched herself at him the moment he appeared, her arms wrapping around his waist in a fierce hug. "You're okay," she said, her voice muffled against his damp jacket. "I'm okay," he confirmed, holding her close. "Just wet and tired and probably going to smell like hotel ballroom for a week." She pulled back, looking up at him with eyes that had seen too much loss to take his safety for granted. The news said it was an accident, but Mrs. Kowalski said it looked deliberate. "Which is it?" Adrian sighed, leading her to the couch and sitting down. He had always been honest with Sophie, even about difficult things. She deserved truth, not platitudes. "It was deliberate," he said quietly. "Someone tried to hurt the woman who was speaking tonight. I saw it happening and stopped it." Sophie processed this with the analytical mind that approached everything like a problem to solve. "So someone tried to commit murder and you prevented it. That means the person who did it is still out there. Are you in danger? Are we in danger?" "No," Adrian said firmly. "This had nothing to do with us. I was just in the right place at the right time." But even as he said it, doubt whispered at the back of his mind. The man he had locked eyes with across the ballroom had seen him clearly, had registered his face and his response. In Adrian's experience, professional operators didn't like leaving loose ends. And a witness who could identify them was definitely a loose end. They watched the documentary together. Sophie curled against his side with a blanket wrapped around them both. The narrator's voice described the mathematics of black holes, the way they bent space-time and swallowed light. Sophie murmured occasional observations, her scientific curiosity overriding her tiredness. And Adrian felt himself slowly relaxing into the familiar comfort of their routine by the time the credits rolled. Sophie was asleep, her breathing deep and even. Adrian carried her to bed, tucking her in with practiced care. He stood for a moment in her doorway, watching her sleep, and felt the weight of responsibility settle over him like a familiar coat. Everything he did, every choice he made, was measured against this single imperative: keep her safe. Give her the life Rachel would have wanted for her in his own room. Adrian finally allowed himself to process the evening's events. He sat on the edge of his bed, Vivian's business card in his hand, and examined it in the lamplight. The cardstock was heavy, expensive, the kind of thing that signaled serious money and serious power. The private number suggested she genuinely wanted to speak with him, not just offer polite thanks through an assistant. "Call me tomorrow," she had said. "I'd like to speak with you about something important." Adrian's instincts, the ones that had kept him alive through deployments and operations, whispered warnings. Important conversations with billionaire CEOs who had just survived assassination attempts rarely led anywhere simple. Whatever Vivian Cross wanted to discuss, it would pull him further into her world, a world that had already proven deadly. A world that had already proven deadly. The smart move would be to ignore the card, let the investigation run its course, find another security job after his suspension ended. Stay in his lane, keep his head down, focus on Sophie and their quiet life. But as he lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to rain drum against the window, Adrian knew he wouldn't make the smart move. Someone had tried to kill Vivian Cross in a room full of witnesses, with planning and resources that suggested serious backing. And the man who had watched his failure with cold calculation had locked eyes with Adrian, had marked him as a potential problem. Whether he wanted it or not, Adrian was already involved. The question now was how deep that involvement would go, and what price he would ultimately pay for a split-second decision to save a stranger's life. Tomorrow, he would call the number on the card. Tomorrow he would step further into the unknown. But tonight, he let exhaustion claim him. Falling into uneasy sleep filled with dreams of falling chandeliers and gray eyes that saw too much, Morning arrived with pale sunlight filtering through the curtains, and Adrian woke to the smell of burnt toast. He found Sophie in the kitchen, frowning at the smoking toaster with scientific disappointment. "I was trying to make breakfast," she said sheepishly. "Apparently I miscalculated the optimal heat setting." Adrian rescued the charred bread and started fresh, cracking eggs into a pan while Sophie set the table. Their morning routine was comfortable and familiar, an anchor point in what promised to be a complicated day. "So are you going to call her?" Sophie asked, nodding toward Vivian's business card, which sat on the counter where Adrian had left it. "How did you know about that?" "I saw it when I got up for water last night. Plus, it's obvious. Rich lady almost dies, you save her. She probably wants to thank you properly." Sophie paused, then added with the bluntness of youth, "Or hire you. You're really good at protecting people, Dad. Better than working hotel security for minimum wage." Adrian slid scrambled eggs onto her plate. "I like hotel security. Steady hours, no one's shooting at me, and I'm home most nights." "But you're suspended now," Sophie pointed out. "And we both know you're going to call her because you want to know who tried to kill her and why. You get that look when there's a puzzle you can't solve." Adrian couldn't help but smile. His daughter knew him too well. "Finish your breakfast. You've got school." After dropping Sophie at Westmont Academy, Adrian sat in his car for a long moment, staring at the business card. Finally, he dialed the number. Vivian answered on the second ring. "Mr. Cole, I was hoping you'd call. You said you wanted to discuss something important." "I do. Can you meet me at my office? Say 10 o'clock. Adrian glanced at his watch. That gave him 90 minutes. "I'll be there." Quantum Dynamics occupied the top 15 floors of the Stellar Tower, a gleaming structure of glass and steel in downtown Portland that seemed to touch the clouds. The lobby was all modern minimalism, white marble and chrome accents, with a massive abstract sculpture that probably cost more than Adrian's annual salary. Security was notably tight. Adrian counted 4 visible guards and suspected at least 2 more in plainclothes. He was scanned, his ID checked against a visitor list, and issued a temporary badge before being escorted to a private elevator that required both a keycard and fingerprint scan. The executive floor was elegant but understated, designed to impress through quality rather than ostentation. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of Portland and the mountains beyond. Adrian was led through open workspace where engineers hunched over computers, their screens filled with complex equations and code he couldn't begin to decipher. Vivian's office occupied a corner suite with windows on 2 sides. She stood when he entered, dressed now in a charcoal business suit that somehow made her look even more formidable than the evening gown had. Her hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and reading glasses perched on her nose gave her an academic air. "Thank you for coming," she said, gesturing to a leather chair across from her desk. "Coffee? Tea?" "I'm fine, thank you." Vivian settled into her own chair, removing her glasses and studying him with those sharp gray eyes. "I did some research on you after last night, Mr. Cole. Adrian Cole, former Navy lieutenant. 12 years of service, including 6 with Naval Special Warfare. Multiple commendations, including a Silver Star for actions in Afghanistan. Honorably discharged 3 years ago. Currently working private security while raising your daughter alone after your wife's death. Is that accurate?" Adrian felt a flicker of discomfort at having his life summarized so clinically. "It is. Should I be concerned that you investigated me?" "I make it a practice to know who I'm dealing with," Vivian replied. "Especially when they've saved my life. Your record is impressive. The citation for your Silver Star makes interesting reading. You led a rescue operation through hostile territory to extract civilians trapped in a combat zone. High risk, 0 casualties. That takes exceptional skill and judgment. It was a long time ago. The skills don't fade, though. You proved that last night. Vivian leaned forward, her expression intent. I want to hire you, Mr. Cole. Not for security, I have an entire department for that. I want you to help me find out who tried to kill me and why. Adrian raised an eyebrow. That's police work. Detective Park seemed competent. Detective Park is investigating a crime. I need someone investigating a conspiracy. Vivian stood and walked to the window, looking out over the city. My company is on the verge of a breakthrough that will revolutionize data security. We've developed quantum encryption that's theoretically unbreakable. It would make current security systems obsolete overnight. That sounds valuable, Adrian said carefully. Valuable enough that several governments and dozens of corporations would pay billions to possess it or destroy it. She turned back to face him. 3 months ago, we discovered someone had tried to infiltrate our research division. 2 months ago, one of my lead engineers died in what police called a random mugging. Last month, I started receiving anonymous threats. And last night, someone tried to drop a chandelier on my head. Adrian processed this, his tactical mind automatically connecting the dots. You think it's all connected? A coordinated campaign to either stop your research or eliminate you. I don't think. I know. Vivian returned to her desk and pulled out a folder, sliding it across to Adrian. This is what my security team has compiled. Patterns, connections, suspicious coincidences. None of it is enough to prove anything, but all of it together paints a picture. Adrian opened the folder, scanning through printed emails, surveillance photos, and incident reports. The documentation was thorough, professional, clearly compiled by people who knew what they were doing. Your security team is obviously competent, he said. Why do you need me? Because they're constrained by corporate protocols and legal boundaries, Vivian replied. They can't pursue leads that might expose company vulnerabilities or risk litigation. And more importantly, they didn't see the cable last night. You did. You have instincts they lack. Adrian closed the folder. Miss Cross, I'm a single father with a 10-year-old daughter. Whatever you're caught up in, it's dangerous and complicated. That's not a world I want to bring home with me. I understand, Vivian said quietly. But consider this. Whoever tried to kill me last night saw you interfere. You're already involved, whether you accept my offer or not. At least if you're working for me, you'll have resources and protection. The argument hit home because Adrian had already reached the same conclusion during his sleepless night. The man in the serving uniform had marked him, had registered him as a threat or a witness. Professional operators didn't leave loose ends. What exactly would this job entail? He asked. Full investigation into the attempts on my life and my company's security. You'd have access to all our internal files, cooperation from my security team, and a substantial budget for any resources you need. You'd report directly to me, bypassing normal corporate channels. She named a figure that made Adrian blink. It was more than he made in a year of security work. That's generous. That's appropriate for the risk involved, Vivian corrected. And there's one more thing. She pulled out another document, this one legal-looking and official. If you successfully identify who's behind these attacks and help bring them to justice, I'm prepared to offer you a permanent position as my Director of Personal Security. Full benefits, salary commensurate with your skills, and a trust fund for your daughter's education. Full ride to any university she chooses. Adrian felt his breath catch. Sophie's future secured. No more worrying about tuition or whether they could afford the advanced programs her brilliant mind deserved. It was everything he wanted for her, handed to him on a silver platter. Why? He asked. You could hire established firms with international resources. Why trust someone you just met? Vivian's expression softened slightly. Because in that ballroom, when everyone else froze or ran, you moved. You didn't hesitate, didn't calculate the risk to yourself, didn't worry about protocols or consequences. You just acted to save a life. That kind of integrity is rare, Mr. Cole. And right now I need people around me I can trust absolutely. Adrian looked down at the folder, then at the contract, then at Vivian. His instincts screamed warnings about getting involved with corporate intrigue and assassination attempts. But his heart thought of Sophie, of securing her future, of giving her every opportunity Rachel would have wanted for her. I need 24 hours to think about it, he said finally. Of course. Vivian stood, extending her hand. But Mr. Cole, think quickly. Whoever's after me isn't going to wait. And next time they might not fail. Adrian spent the afternoon at the public library, using their computers to research quantum dynamics and Vivian Cross. What he found painted a picture of a woman who had built an empire through brilliance and ruthless business acumen. She had founded the company 8 years ago with a breakthrough in quantum computing theory, taking it public within 3 years and growing it into a multi-billion-dollar enterprise. But success had made enemies. Adrian found articles about hostile takeover attempts, lawsuits from competitors claiming stolen technology, and regulatory investigations into whether quantum dynamics had too much power over global encryption standards. Several industry analysts suggested that Vivian's quantum breakthrough would make her either the most powerful person in tech or a target for elimination. His phone rang. Thompson's number. Cole, I've got news, the supervisor said without preamble. The police finished their analysis of the chandelier. The cable was cut with industrial bolt cutters, probably sometime during setup yesterday afternoon. Security footage from that time period has been mysteriously corrupted. Whoever did this had inside access and knew how to avoid detection. So it was definitely attempted murder, not an accident. No question. Detective Park wants to talk to you again. She's got questions about the man you saw near the service entrance. Thompson paused. Also, Elite Events is getting pressure from the hotel to identify security failures. I'm trying to protect you, Cole, but corporate wants someone's head. Your suspension might become permanent. Adrian absorbed this calmly. He had already expected as much. I understand. Thanks for the heads up. After hanging up, he sat for a long moment, thinking. Then he called Vivian's number. I'm in, he said when she answered. But I have conditions. My daughter's safety is non-negotiable. If at any point I think this puts her at risk, I walk away. Agreed, Vivian said immediately. I'll have my security team coordinate protection for her. Discreet, but effective. And I work my own way. I won't be constrained by corporate politics or legal concerns about evidence admissibility. If I find something, we deal with it directly. There was a pause. That could put you in legal jeopardy. I'm aware. Do we have a deal or not? We have a deal, Mr. Cole. Come back to my office tomorrow morning. I'll introduce you to the team and get you access to everything you need. That evening, Adrian sat Sophie down for a serious conversation. He explained, in age-appropriate terms, that he had accepted a temporary job that might involve some risk, and that some security measures would be implemented to keep her safe. Sophie listened with her characteristic analytical focus, then asked the question he'd been dreading. Is this because of the lady you saved? The one whose card you called? Yes. And you think whoever tried to hurt her might try to hurt you because you stopped them? Adrian hesitated, then nodded. Lying to Sophie had never worked, and he wouldn't start now. She was quiet for a moment, processing. Then she said, Mom used to say that good people have to stand up against bad things, even when it's scary. Is that what you're doing? I'm trying to. Sophie hugged him tightly. Then I'm proud of you, Dad. Just don't be too brave, okay? Come home safe. The next morning, Adrian arrived at Quantum Dynamics to find Vivian waiting with 3 other people. She introduced them efficiently. Martin Chun, head of corporate security, a former FBI agent with a skeptical expression. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the company's chief technology officer, a brilliant engineer who looked nervous, and James Peterson, Vivian's executive assistant, who radiated competent efficiency. Adrian will be conducting an independent investigation into the recent security incidents, Vivian told them. He has my full authority and complete access to company resources. I expect complete cooperation. Chun's skepticism was palpable. With respect, Miss Cross, we already have investigators on this. Bringing in an outsider could compromise operational security. Your investigators haven't prevented 3 incidents in as many months, Vivian replied coolly. Mr. Cole brings a fresh perspective and skills that complement your team's capabilities. Adrian stepped in smoothly. I'm not here to step on toes, Mr. Chun. I'd like to review what you've already compiled and coordinate our efforts. 2 sets of eyes are better than 1. Chun's expression suggested he disagreed, but he nodded curtly. Fine, I'll have my files sent to your workspace. Dr. Tanaka spoke up, her voice soft but urgent. Mr. Cole, I don't know if Ms. Cross mentioned, but I've been receiving strange communications. Encrypted messages that bypass our security systems. They seem to know details about our quantum research that should be classified. What kind of details? Adrian asked. Theoretical frameworks, test results, even personal information about team members. She pulled out her phone, showing him a screenshot of a message. This arrived yesterday. The message was brief, but chilling. The breakthrough dies with her. Step away while you can. Adrian felt his tactical instincts engage. You're being warned to abandon the project or face consequences. Has anyone else received similar messages? 2 other engineers, Tanaka confirmed. Both have increased security, but they're scared. Vivian's jaw tightened. I won't be intimidated into abandoning years of research. We're too close to completion. Adrian turned to Peterson. I need a complete list of everyone who knew Ms. Cross would be speaking at the gala. Everyone with access to the ballroom during setup. And any security footage that survived the corruption. I'll have it within the hour, Peterson replied. The rest of the day was spent reviewing files, interviewing staff, and mapping connections. Adrian worked methodically, his military training organizing chaos into actionable intelligence. By evening, patterns began emerging. The corrupted security footage coincided with specific shift changes. The threatening messages originated from IP addresses that traced to public Wi-Fi locations near Quantum Dynamics offices. The engineer who died had been working on the exact encryption algorithm that was now the project's core. Breakthrough. Adrian was deep in analysis when his phone rang. Sophie's school number. Mr. Cole, this is Principal Martinez at Westmont Academy. There's been an incident. Your daughter is safe, but we need you to come immediately. Adrian's blood ran cold. What happened? A man attempted to approach Sophie during afternoon recess. Our security stopped him, but he claimed to be family. Sophie insisted she didn't know him. Police are here now. Adrian was moving before the principal finished speaking. I'm 10 minutes away. Don't let anyone near her. He burst into Vivian's office without knocking. I have to go. There's been an incident at my daughter's school. Vivian stood immediately, grabbing her coat. I'm coming with you. My car is faster. They made it in 7 minutes, Vivian's driver navigating traffic with practiced skill. Adrian barely registered the luxury of the vehicle, his mind focused entirely on Sophie. At the school, police cars bracketed the entrance. He found Sophie in the principal's office, surrounded by officers, looking small and frightened, but unharmed. Dad! She launched herself into his arms. I'm here, sweetheart. You're safe. He held her close, examining her for any signs of injury. What happened? Detective Park was there, her expression grim. Mr. Cole, we need to talk. The police interview room at Westmont Academy smelled of chalk dust and floor polish, incongruous scents for a conversation about potential kidnapping. Adrian sat with Sophie pressed against his side while Detective Park reviewed her notes, and Vivian stood by the window. Her presence unexpected, but somehow steadying. "The man who approached your daughter matched the description you gave of the individual you saw at the gala," Park said, showing Adrian a grainy photo from the school security camera. He was approximately 5'10", late 30s, wearing casual clothing. He told the recess monitor he was Sophie's uncle, here to pick her up early for a doctor's appointment. Adrian studied the photo, his jaw tight. The image quality was poor, but something about the man's stance confirmed his suspicion. This was the same operative from the hotel, the one who had watched the failed assassination with cold calculation. "I don't have a brother," Adrian said quietly. "And all approved pickup contacts are registered with the school." He knew that approach wouldn't work, which means it was a message. A message saying what? Park asked. "That he can reach my daughter anytime he wants. That I'm vulnerable through her." Adrian's voice remained calm, but Vivian noticed his hands clenching and unclenching, the only visible sign of the fury beneath his controlled exterior. Sophie spoke up, her voice small but steady. "He didn't try to grab me or anything. When Mrs. Chun said she needed to verify with the office, he just smiled and walked away. Like he didn't really care if it worked. Because success wasn't the point," Vivian said, understanding flooding her features. He wanted Adrian to know he'd been there. To make him afraid. Park closed her notebook. "We're treating this as an attempted abduction connected to the gala incident, Mr. Cole. I strongly recommend you consider protective custody for your daughter until we apprehend this individual." Adrian shook his head. "Protective custody means strangers guarding her, moving her to an unfamiliar location, disrupting her life completely. That's not acceptable. Then what do you suggest?" Park's tone held frustration. "This man is clearly escalating. First Ms. Cross, now your family. He's dangerous and connected enough to track you down within 24 hours of the incident." Vivian stepped forward. "I have a suggestion, if Mr. Cole is amenable. My estate has comprehensive security, 24-hour monitoring, trained personnel. Sophie could stay there temporarily, with Adrian, until the threat is neutralized. She'd have her own room, private tutors if needed, and be completely safe." Adrian started to refuse automatically, the idea of accepting such an enormous favor, feeling like crossing a line he couldn't uncross. But Sophie tugged his sleeve. "Dad, can I talk to you? Alone?" They stepped into the hallway, leaving Vivian and Park in the office. Sophie looked up at him with eyes too old for her young face. Eyes that had learned about loss and danger earlier than any person should. "You're going to say no because you don't want to owe anyone anything," she said. "But Dad, I'm scared. That man knew my school, knew my schedule. If Ms. Cross's house is safer, shouldn't we go there? Just until the police catch him?" Adrian crouched to her level, hands on her shoulders. "Sweetheart, this isn't your burden to carry. I'm supposed to protect you, not the other way around. You are protecting me. By being smart instead of proud." She hugged him fiercely. "Mom would say the same thing. Remember how she always told you that asking for help isn't weakness?" The words hit Adrian like a physical blow. Rachel had said exactly that, many times, usually when he was struggling to adjust to civilian life and refusing therapy or support groups. She had understood that his military training had taught him self-reliance to a fault. That admitting vulnerability felt like failure. "You're too smart for your own good," he said, voice thick with emotion. "I learned from the best," Sophie replied. Back in the office, Adrian met Vivian's questioning gaze. "We accept your offer, temporarily. But I pay rent or contribute somehow. This isn't charity." "Consider it part of your employment compensation," Vivian said smoothly. "Secure housing while on assignment. Perfectly standard." The drive to Vivian's estate took them outside Portland proper, into the hills where old money kept its distance from the city's chaos. The house revealed itself gradually through tall pines and manicured landscaping, a modern architectural masterpiece of glass, steel, and warm wood that somehow felt both grand and welcoming. Sophie's eyes widened as they passed through the security gate. "Dad, this is like something from a movie." "It's just a house," Adrian said. Though he privately agreed with her assessment, Vivian's assistant, James, met them at the entrance, efficiently organizing their hastily packed belongings and showing them to a guest wing that was larger than their entire apartment. Sophie's room had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking gardens and forest, a desk already set up with a new laptop and books on advanced mathematics and physics. "I took the liberty of anticipating what a bright young person might enjoy," Vivian said, appearing in the doorway. "But if I got it wrong, just let James know and we'll adjust." Sophie walked slowly around the room, touching things with careful reverence. "This is amazing." "Thank you, Miss Cross. Call me Vivian." "And you're welcome." She turned to Adrian. "Your room is next door. I thought you'd want to be close. Dinner is at 7 if you're interested, or James can bring something to your rooms if you'd prefer privacy." After Vivian left, Adrian helped Sophie unpack while she chattered about the security feature she'd noticed. The mathematical precision of the architecture, the probability calculations for various threat scenarios. Her mind was processing fear through analysis, turning terror into equations she could solve. "Hey," Adrian said softly, stopping her mid-calculation. "It's okay to be scared, Soph. You don't have to be brave every second." Her composure cracked slightly. "I am scared. But I'm also excited because this is like being in an actual mystery. And Vivian is really smart, Dad. Did you see the books in her office? Quantum mechanics, cryptography, philosophy. She's kind of amazing." Adrian had noticed, along with a dozen other details about Vivian, Cross that intrigued him despite his best efforts to maintain professional distance. The way she commanded rooms without raising her voice. The sharp intelligence that missed nothing. The unexpected vulnerability she'd shown when discussing the attempts on her life. Dinner that evening was surprisingly casual. Vivian had dismissed her staff, choosing instead to cook a simple pasta dish herself while Adrian and Sophie sat at the kitchen island, watching with amusement as the billionaire CEO struggled with a jar of marinara sauce. "I run a multi-billion-dollar company, but can't open a jar without help," Vivian said, laughing as she finally succeeded. "That seems like a metaphor for something." "It means you're human," Adrian replied, which is reassuring, honestly. Over dinner, they talked about everything except the threat hanging over them. Sophie asked Vivian about quantum computing, and the CEO launched into an explanation that was simultaneously complex and accessible, clearly enjoying the chance to discuss her passion with someone who actually understood the mathematics. Adrian watched them connect, saw his daughter light up in a way she hadn't since Rachel's death, and felt something shift in his chest. This wasn't just a job anymore, wasn't just about money or protecting the client. Somehow, in the span of 2 days, Vivian Cross had become important to both of them in ways that transcended professional boundaries. Later, after Sophie was asleep, Adrian found Vivian on the terrace overlooking the city. Portland glittered below them like scattered diamonds, and the night air carried the scent of pine and distant rain. "She's remarkable," Vivian said without turning. "Your daughter. Brilliant and brave and kind. You've done an incredible job raising her alone." "I had a good teacher," Adrian replied, joining her at the railing. "Rachel was the brilliant one. I'm just trying not to mess up her legacy." "I doubt you could mess it up if you tried." Vivian turned to face him, her expression serious. "Adrian, I need to apologize. By hiring you, I've put Sophie in danger. That man today, he came because of me, because of my company's research and the enemies it's made. I'm sorry." Adrian shook his head. He came because I intervened at the gala. That was my choice, and I'd make it again. You're not responsible for the actions of criminals. Still, I feel responsible. Sophie is a person, not collateral damage. If something happened to her because of me, it won't, Adrian interrupted firmly. Because I won't let it. That's what I do, Vivian. I protect people. It's who I've always been, in the Navy and now. You didn't create that obligation. You're just the current focus of it. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, the city lights painting their faces in soft gold. Then Vivian said quietly, I'm not used to relying on anyone. I built my company alone, fought every battle alone, learned to trust only myself. But having you here, knowing Sophie's safe, actually sleeping through the night for the first time in weeks, it's unfamiliar. And unexpectedly wonderful. Adrian understood completely. He had learned the same self-reliance, the same wariness of depending on others. But standing here with Vivian, feeling the weight of shared purpose and growing connection, he wondered if maybe it was time to relearn those lessons. We protect each other, he said simply. You keep Sophie safe with your resources. I keep you safe with my skills. And maybe together we figure out who's behind all this and end the threat permanently. Vivian smiled, genuine warmth transforming her usually serious expression. Together. I like the sound of that. 3 days into their arrangement at Vivian's estate, Adrian had fallen into a routine that felt both foreign and surprisingly comfortable. Mornings began with Sophie's online classes in the estate's library, a room with vaulted ceilings and enough books to stock a small university. Adrian would work nearby, reviewing security footage and financial records that Vivian's team had compiled, his tactical mind piecing together patterns from seemingly random data. The breakthrough came on Thursday afternoon. Adrian was cross-referencing employee access logs with the timeline of security breaches when something clicked. Every incident, from the corrupted footage to the threatening emails to the chandelier sabotage, had occurred during shifts when the same 3 contractors were on site, maintenance workers, hired through an external staffing agency. He immediately called Martin Chun, Quantum Dynamics Security Chief. I need everything you have on Apex Solutions, Adrian said without preamble. The staffing agency you use for maintenance contracts. Chun's response was wary. What did you find? A pattern. Every security incident coincides with their personnel being on site. That's not coincidence. Apex has been our contractor for 2 years, Chun protested. They're vetted, bonded, fully licensed. Vetted, bonded, fully licensed. Then someone compromised them, or they were never legitimate to begin with. Adrian pulled up the company's registration documents on his laptop. Their corporate filing lists an address in Seattle. I need you to verify it actually exists. 2 hours later, Chun called back, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. The Seattle address is a mail forwarding service. Apex Solutions doesn't exist beyond paperwork. It's a shell company, and we've been letting their people access our facilities for 24 months. Adrian felt cold clarity settle over him. They've had time to plant surveillance equipment, copy security protocols, identify vulnerabilities. This isn't just about killing Vivian. Someone wants complete access to quantum dynamics research. I'm bringing this to Ms. Cross immediately and pulling all Apex personnel from our facilities. No, Adrian said sharply. If you pull them now, whoever's running this operation will know we're onto them and disappear. We need to identify who they're working for first. So what do you suggest? We set a trap. Let them think they still have access while we watch everything they do. Can your team handle covert surveillance without tipping them off? Chun was quiet for a moment. Yes, but this is risky. If they realize we're watching, they might accelerate their timeline. They're already accelerating, Adrian replied. They tried to grab my daughter. That's desperation, not patience. We need to move now. That evening, Adrian briefed Vivian in her home office, a sleek space with multiple monitors displaying real-time data from quantum dynamics operations. She listened intently, her expression growing darker as he explained the implications. 24 months of access, she said quietly. They could have copied everything, our entire research database, client information, proprietary algorithms. If that data reaches competitors or foreign governments, it would destroy your company's competitive advantage. Adrian finished. But it also means they need you alive until the research is complete. Dead, you're a martyr, and the government seizes everything for investigation. Alive but discredited or scared into selling, you're manageable. Vivian stood and walked to the window, her silhouette sharp against the city lights. So the chandelier wasn't meant to kill me. It was meant to terrify me into making mistakes or accepting a buyout offer. That's my theory. The question is who benefits most from acquiring your technology. The list is extensive. 3 major defense contractors, 2 Chinese state-owned enterprises, half a dozen Silicon Valley competitors. She turned back to face him. But there's one name that keeps appearing in my research. Helix Corporation, owned by Graham Thorne. He tried to buy Quantum Dynamics 18 months ago. I refused. Since then, he's been systematically acquiring our competitors and suppliers, creating a monopoly position. Adrian pulled up information on Thorne, finding a man in his 60s with silver hair and a reputation for ruthless business tactics. He has the resources and motive. Any evidence connecting him to Apex Solutions? Nothing direct, but Helix uses multiple shell companies for acquisitions to avoid regulatory scrutiny. It's his standard operating procedure. Before Adrian could respond, alarms shrieked throughout the estate. Red lights flashed in the hallway, and his phone erupted with alerts from the security system. He was moving instantly, years of combat training overriding conscious thought. "Stay here," he commanded Vivian. Already running towards Sophie's room, he found her standing by the window, face pale but composed. "Dad," the perimeter sensors detected movement near the east fence. 3 separate intrusion points. Adrian pulled her away from the window, positioning himself between her and potential sight lines. "How do you know that?" "I linked my laptop to the security system yesterday. I wanted to understand how it works." She held up her computer, showing a detailed schematic of the estate with red markers indicating breach points. "They're using a coordinated approach, professional tactics." Pride and fear warred in Adrian's chest. His daughter's brilliance was simultaneously their greatest asset and his deepest vulnerability. He grabbed his phone, calling the estate security chief while guiding Sophie toward the reinforced safe room Vivian had shown them on their first day. The security chief, a former Secret Service agent named Patricia Walsh, answered immediately. "Mr. Cole, we have a situation. 3 hostiles breached the perimeter using signal jammers to disable sensors. My team is responding, but they're well-equipped and moving fast. Where's Miss Cross?" "Her office secured. We're evacuating her to the panic room now. Sophie and I are heading to the guest wing safe room. Keep me updated." He ended the call and turned to Sophie. "Remember the drill we practiced?" She nodded, fear showing now but controlled. "Safe room, lock the door, don't come out until you give the all-clear signal." They reached the safe room, a reinforced space disguised as a walk-in closet. Adrian ushered Sophie inside, the heavy door swinging shut with a hydraulic hiss. Through the small window, he saw her face, trying to be brave. "I'll be right back," he said. "I promise." Adrian moved through the house with tactical precision, checking sight lines and clearing rooms. Through the windows, he caught glimpses of security personnel engaging the intruders. Muzzle flashes lit the gardens like deadly fireflies. The attackers were good, moving with military discipline. But Walsh's team was better. He found Vivian in the hallway outside her office. refusing to enter the panic room despite James's urgent pleas. "I'm not hiding while people fight to protect me," she said stubbornly. "Then you're staying with me," Adrian replied, taking her arm and pulling her toward a secondary exit he had scouted days earlier. "Move." They descended a service stairway that led to the basement level. Adrian could hear the firefight intensifying above them, shouts and the crack of gunfire echoing through the estate structure. His mind cataloged threats and calculated probabilities, the old familiar focus of combat settling over him like a second skin. The basement was dark, lit only by emergency strips. Adrian guided Vivian through the maze of mechanical rooms and storage areas, heading for an exit that opened into the wooded area behind the property. If the house was compromised, getting outside and into cover was their best option. They were halfway across a large storage room when a figure emerged from the shadows ahead. The man from the hotel, the one who had approached Sophie's school, stood blocking their path. In his hand was a pistol, held with professional competence. "Mr. Cole," the man said, his voice carrying a slight European accent, "I hoped we might meet properly. My employer would like to speak with Miss Cross about a business proposition." Adrian positioned himself between Vivian and the gunman, his body a shield. "Your employer tried to kill her with a chandelier. That's a poor opening negotiation." The man smiled without humor. "That was meant to encourage cooperation, not terminate it. Miss Cross has something Helix Corporation needs. We're prepared to pay generously for it." "I'm not for sale," Vivian said from behind Adrian, her voice steady despite the gun pointed their direction. "And neither is my research. Everyone has a price, Ms. Cross. Perhaps you simply haven't heard the right offer." The gunman's expression hardened. "Come with me now, peacefully, and your employees and Mr. Cole's daughter remain unharmed. Refuse, and this estate becomes a battlefield with casualties you could have prevented." Adrian felt rage surge through him, cold and focused. This man had threatened Sophie, had turned their lives into a war zone, all for corporate espionage and profit. Every instinct screamed to attack, to eliminate the threat with the skills burned into him through years of training. But the gun was steady. The distance too great to close before shots were fired, and Vivian was directly behind him. Any move he made would put her at risk. "Lower your weapon," Adrian said calmly. "You're surrounded by security personnel. There's no escape. I only need one escape, Mr. Cole." The gunman's finger moved to the trigger. "And I'm taking it now." The moment stretched like heated glass, ready to shatter. Adrian's mind raced through tactical calculations, measuring angles and distances, and the probability of failure. The gunman's stance was professional, weight balanced, weapon steady. A veteran like Adrian himself, which made him predictable in some ways and dangerous in others. Then the lights went out. Sophie's voice came through Adrian's earpiece, a communication channel he had set up with the estate security system. "Dad, I killed the basement power. You have about 3 seconds before emergency lighting kicks in. 3 seconds of absolute darkness." Adrian moved. Years of close-quarters combat training compressed into pure instinct. He lunged left, away from Vivian's position, drawing the gunman's aim away from her. His hand found the edge of a shelving unit, and he pulled hard, sending metal racks and stored equipment crashing toward the spot where the gunman had been standing. The crash was enormous in the confined space. Adrian heard a grunt of pain and the clatter of the weapon hitting concrete. Emergency lights flickered on, bathing everything in dim red. The gunman was down, trapped under collapsed shelving. Blood streaming from a gash on his forehead. Adrian was on him in seconds, using a zip tie from his pocket to secure the man's hands with practiced efficiency. The gunman struggled, but Adrian's knee in his back and superior position made resistance futile. "Vivian, you okay?" Adrian called without taking his eyes off his captive. "I'm fine," she replied, her voice shaky but functional. "How did the lights go out?" "Sophie," Adrian said simply. Through his earpiece, he added, "Good work, kiddo. Stay in the safe room until I give the all clear." "Copy that, Captain," came her reply. Pride evident in her young voice, security personnel flooded the basement moments later, weapons drawn and ready. Patricia Walsh took one look at the scene and allowed herself a thin smile of approval. "Nicely done, Mr. Cole. The other two intruders are in custody. No casualties on our side, though one of theirs needs medical attention." Adrian hauled the gunman to his feet, ignoring the man's grimace of pain. "This one needs to answer questions more than he needs a doctor. Get Detective Park here immediately." The next hours were controlled chaos. Police arrived in force, treating the estate like the crime scene it had become. The 3 captured operatives were separated and interrogated. Detective Park coordinated with federal agents who appeared with impressive speed, suggesting that quantum dynamics work had already been on someone's radar at higher levels of law enforcement. Adrian finally retrieved Sophie from the safe room, holding her close as she trembled with delayed reaction to the danger. Vivian joined them, kneeling to Sophie's level. "You saved us," Vivian said quietly. "That was incredibly brave and brilliant." "Thank you, Sophie." Sophie managed a watery smile. "I just did what Dad taught me. Have a plan, stay calm, execute when the moment comes. Your father is an excellent teacher." By dawn, the picture had become clear. The captured operatives, facing serious federal charges, had cooperated in exchange for reduced sentences. They confirmed what Adrian had suspected. Helix Corporation, under Graham Thorne's direction, had orchestrated everything. The shell company, the infiltration, the assassination attempt. All of it designed to either force Vivian into selling quantum dynamics or steal the research outright. Detective Park briefed them in Vivian's office as sunrise painted the windows gold. "We have enough evidence to arrest Thorne and dismantle his operation. The FBI is executing warrants as we speak." "It's over, Miss Cross. You're safe." Vivian nodded slowly, exhaustion and relief warring on her face. "What about charges? Will they stick?" "Conspiracy to commit murder, corporate espionage, multiple federal violations. He's looking at decades in prison." Park turned to Adrian. "And Mr. Cole, the department wants to formally commend you for your actions. You've prevented what could have been a significant breach of national security." After Park left, the 3 of them sat in silence, processing the end of a crisis that had dominated their lives for days. Sophie was curled against Adrian's side, fighting sleep. Vivian stood at the window, watching her estate slowly return to normal as security personnel packed up equipment and police vehicles departed. "It's really over," she said quietly, as if testing the words. "The immediate threat is over," Adrian corrected gently. "But Thorne's arrest will create chaos in the industry. You'll need to rebuild trust, secure your research even more thoroughly, probably testify at trials." "I know." She turned to face them. "Which is why I need to ask you something important, Adrian. The offer I made, Director of Personal Security, with all the benefits we discussed, it still stands. But I'd like to modify it." Adrian raised an eyebrow. "Modify how?" "I don't just need a security director. I need a partner, someone I trust absolutely to help me navigate the challenges ahead. Someone who understands both tactics and integrity." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "I'm offering you a position as Chief Operating Officer of Quantum Dynamics. Equal authority with me on all operational decisions. Full equity stake in the company. And a commitment that Sophie's education and future are permanently secured regardless of what happens to either of us." Adrian stared at her, stunned. "Vivian, I'm not qualified to run a tech company. I'm a security specialist and a former sailor. You're a leader who makes sound decisions under pressure, who inspires loyalty, and who sees patterns others miss. Those are the qualities I need beside me." She smiled slightly. "The technical aspects can be learned. The character behind them cannot. Sophie stirred, looking up at her father. "Dad, you should say yes." This is what Mom would call a life-changing opportunity, requiring courage to accept. Adrian looked at his daughter, then at Vivian, then around the office that represented a world so different from anything he had known. Every instinct said it was too much, too fast, too far outside his comfort zone. But those same instincts had told him to save Vivian from a falling chandelier, to investigate the conspiracy, to bring Sophie here for safety. And all of those instincts had been right. "On one condition," he said finally. "I maintain operational control over all security matters. No corporate politics, no board approval needed for decisions that keep people safe." Vivian extended her hand. "Deal." As their hands clasped, sealing an agreement that would reshape both their lives. Adrian felt something he hadn't experienced since Rachel's death. Hope for a future that held more than simple survival. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. This step into the unknown with a woman he was beginning to realize meant far more to him than any professional relationship could explain. Sophie, watching them with the perceptive intelligence that missed nothing, smiled knowingly and settled back against her father's side. Whatever came next, they would face it together, this unlikely family forged in crisis and tempered by trust. And somehow, that made even the uncertainties ahead feel like possibilities rather than threats. 6 weeks after Graham Thorne's arrest, Quantum Dynamics held a press conference that drew media attention from around the world. The sleek auditorium at their headquarters was packed with journalists, industry analysts, and representatives from competing firms, all eager to hear how the company would move forward after such public turmoil. Adrian stood backstage, adjusting his tie with unfamiliar awkwardness. He had traded his security uniform for a tailored suit that Vivian had insisted he needed for his new role. Sophie sat nearby, swinging her legs and looking remarkably composed for someone about to watch her father address hundreds of people. "You look nervous," she observed with characteristic bluntness. "I am nervous," Adrian admitted. "Public speaking wasn't exactly part of my Navy training. Just pretend you're briefing your team before a mission. You're good at that." Vivian appeared from the main stage, elegant in a charcoal suit that somehow made her look both professional and approachable. "Ready?" "As I'll ever be," Adrian replied. They walked onto the stage together to a wave of camera flashes. Vivian took the podium first, her voice clear and confident as she addressed the assembled press. "Thank you all for coming. The past 2 months have tested Quantum Dynamics in ways we never anticipated. We've faced corporate espionage, threats to our personnel, and attempts to steal technology that represents years of dedicated research." She paused, letting the weight of those words settle. "But we've also discovered something far more valuable than any algorithm or encryption protocol: the power of integrity and courage when facing overwhelming odds." She gestured to Adrian. "This is Adrian Cole, former Navy lieutenant and the man who saved my life when others would have looked away. But more than that, he uncovered the conspiracy against our company, protected our research, and demonstrated leadership that transcends any job description. I'm proud to announce that Adrian has accepted the position of Chief Operating Officer of Quantum Dynamics, where he will oversee all operational and security matters." The room erupted in questions, reporters shouting over each other. Vivian raised a hand for silence. Additionally, Quantum Dynamics is establishing the Rachel Cole Foundation for STEM Education, named in honor of Adrian's late wife. The foundation will provide full scholarships and mentorship programs for young people pursuing science and technology, with special emphasis on students who have faced adversity or loss. Because talent exists everywhere, but opportunity does not. Adrian felt his throat tighten at the mention of Rachel's name. Sophie grabbed his hand, squeezing tight. When it was his turn to speak, Adrian approached the podium feeling the weight of hundreds of eyes. He thought of all the briefings he had given to his teams. All the moments when clear communication meant the difference between success and failure. "I'm not a businessman or a tech expert," he began simply. "I'm a father and a veteran who happened to be in the right place at the right time. But what I've learned through this experience is that protecting people isn't just about physical security. It's about creating environments where integrity matters more than profit, where doing the right thing isn't negotiable, and where we take care of each other." He glanced at Sophie, then at Vivian. "Someone once told me that good people have to stand up against bad things, even when it's scary. That's what Vivian Cross does every day by pushing technology forward, despite those who would steal or destroy it. That's what my daughter does by pursuing knowledge fearlessly. And that's what I hope to do in this new role. Stand up for what's right and protect the people doing important work." The applause was genuine and sustained. Questions followed, which Vivian and Adrian fielded together with surprising ease. They announced additional security measures, partnerships with federal agencies, and a commitment to transparency in their operations. After the conference, Detective Park approached them with a satisfied expression. "Thorne's trial begins next month. The prosecution is confident, thanks to the evidence you helped gather. You'll both need to testify, but it should be straightforward." "Good," Vivian said. "I want to see this through to the end." That evening, they celebrated at Adrian's favorite restaurant, a small family-owned Italian place where Sophie had been going since she was small. Nothing fancy, just good food and warm atmosphere. Vivian fit in perfectly, laughing at Sophie's science jokes and asking Adrian about his favorite Navy stories. As they walked back to Vivian's car under the Portland streetlights, Sophie skipped ahead, giving the adults a moment of privacy. "Thank you," Adrian said quietly. "For the foundation, for everything." Rachel would have loved knowing her name was attached to something that helps others. "It was Sophie's idea, actually," Vivian admitted. "She suggested it last week. Said her mother always believed in paying forward the opportunities you receive." Adrian felt his heart swell with pride and love for his remarkable daughter. "She's wiser than both of us combined." "She gets that from her father," Vivian said softly. Her hand finding his, they stood there under the city lights. Beginning of something neither had planned, but both were ready to explore. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. 3 months later, autumn had returned to Portland, bringing with it the kind of crisp morning that made everything feel possible. Adrian stood on the balcony of his new office at Quantum Dynamics, watching the city wake up beneath a sky painted in shades of pink and gold. The office still felt surreal. This space with its modern furniture and panoramic views, so different from the modest security posts and military barracks he had known. But he had grown into the role, discovering that leadership translated across contexts, that the skills he had learned protecting lives applied equally to protecting the company's mission and values. His phone buzzed with a text from Sophie. "Dad, I got accepted into the advanced physics program at the university. They want me to start next semester." Adrian smiled, texting back his congratulations. His daughter's brilliance continued to amaze him, her future now bright with possibilities that would have been impossible without Vivian's intervention. The foundation had already awarded its first round of scholarships, 20 students whose lives would be changed by access to education and mentorship. "Good news?" Vivian asked, entering his office with 2 cups of coffee. Sophie got into the university program she wanted. She'd be taking college-level physics while finishing high school. "That's wonderful, though not surprising. She's extraordinary." Vivian handed him a coffee and stood beside him at the window. "I have news too. The board approved our expansion into medical encryption technology. We'll be protecting patient data for hospitals across the country." "That's significant," Adrian said. Rachel would have loved that. She always said technology should serve people, not the other way around. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the sunrise paint the city in gold. In the months since the attack, they had built something neither expected. A partnership that went beyond professional. A connection that felt like coming home. "I've been thinking," Vivian said carefully, "about the future, about what we're building here. The company is thriving, Sophie's education is secured, and Thorne's conviction sent a message that corporate espionage has consequences. But," Adrian prompted, sensing there was more, "but I don't want to build this alone anymore. I don't want to go home to an empty house or make decisions without someone I trust beside me." She turned to face him directly. "Adrian, these past months with you and Sophie have been the happiest of my life. You've shown me that strength and gentleness aren't opposites, that being vulnerable isn't weakness, and that family can be built rather than just born into." Adrian set down his coffee, giving her his full attention. "Vivian, I'm not asking for promises or commitments you're not ready to make," she continued. "I know Rachel will always be part of who you are, and I respect that. But I'm asking if you'd consider building something permanent with me. A life together, the three of us. A real family." Adrian thought of Rachel, of the love they had shared and the life they had built. He knew she would want him to be happy, would want Sophie to have someone who cared for her the way Vivian did. Moving forward wasn't forgetting the past. It was honoring it by choosing to live fully. "I'd like that," he said simply. "Very much." Vivian's smile was radiant, transforming her entire face. She stepped into his arms, and for a moment they simply held each other, feeling the rightness of this choice. Later that afternoon, they picked Sophie up from school together. She climbed into the car, immediately noticing something different in the atmosphere. "Okay, what happened? You both look weird." "Good weird, but weird." Adrian and Vivian exchanged glances. "How would you feel," Adrian asked carefully, "if Vivian became a more permanent part of our family?" Sophie's eyes widened. "Like, officially? Like she'd move in and we'd all live together?" "If that's something you'd be comfortable with," Vivian added. "Your opinion matters more than anything else." For a moment, Sophie was uncharacteristically quiet, processing. Then her face broke into a huge grin. "Are you kidding? That would be amazing. Can we get a cat too? Because if we're doing the whole family thing, we should definitely get a cat." They all laughed, the tension breaking into joy. As they drove toward Vivian's estate, which would soon become their shared home, Adrian felt pieces of his life clicking into place in ways he never could have predicted that stormy night at the gala, 6 months ago. He had been a security guard working extra shifts to make ends meet. Now he was CEO of a major tech company. His daughter's future was secure. And he had found love again with a woman who challenged and supported him in equal measure. That evening, they sat together on the estate's terrace watching the sun set over Portland. Sophie was between them, explaining her theory about quantum entanglement and consciousness, while they listened with a mixture of comprehension and delighted confusion. "You know what's interesting?" Sophie said suddenly. "Dad, you saved Vivian's life that night, but she kind of saved yours too. And mine. Not from danger, but from just existing instead of really living." Adrian exchanged a look with Vivian over Sophie's head. Both of them struck by the wisdom in those words. "You're absolutely right," Vivian said softly. "We saved each other." As darkness fell and stars began appearing in the clear autumn sky, Adrian felt gratitude wash over him. For the split-second decision that had changed everything. For the courage to accept help when it was offered. For the unexpected family that had formed from crisis and grown into something beautiful. The future stretched ahead, full of challenges and uncertainties. Board meetings and security briefings, Sophie's education and the foundation's growth. But they would face it all together. This unlikely family bound by choice and strengthened by love. Sophie pointed out Jupiter in the evening sky, already pulling out her phone to check if her telescope was properly aligned at home. Vivian listened intently, asking questions that showed genuine interest. And Adrian sat between them, his heart full, finally understanding what Rachel had always told him, that life's greatest gifts often came disguised as disruptions. And that sometimes the bravest thing you could do was simply say yes to unexpected possibilities. The city lights began twinkling below them, a mirror of the stars above. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new moments to protect what mattered and build something lasting. But tonight, there was only this: 3 people who had found each other against impossible odds, creating light in the darkness and proving that courage, integrity, and love could transform everything. Adrian pulled both Sophie and Vivian close, grateful beyond words for the journey that had brought them here. From a falling chandelier to a rising future, from loss to hope, from surviving to truly living. It was, he thought, exactly the kind of miracle that happened when you chose to listen to your instincts and trust in the fundamental goodness of taking action to protect life. And as Sophie launched into another enthusiastic explanation of orbital mechanics, with Vivian hanging on every word and Adrian holding them both close, he knew with absolute certainty that this was where he belonged. Not in the past, not in what might have been, but here in this present moment, building toward a future that honored every sacrifice and celebrated every new beginning. The stars shone overhead, constant and true. Below them, Portland glittered with possibility. And between them all, in the space where 3 lives had woven together into something stronger than any of them alone, there was love, laughter, and the quiet certainty that they were home. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.